The briefing room was silent except for the low hum of the ship's engines. Captain Rollith scanned the faces of his team, each one chosen for this mission based on their expertise, discipline, and ability to handle the unknown. He exhaled slowly, gripping the metal edge of the holodable in front of him. "This is not just another retrieval mission," he said. His voice carried the weight of what they were about to do. "This is the mission. The one that could decide the future of the war." The hologram flickered, forming the shape of an ancient planet, its surface scarred and cracked from millennia of unknown conflicts. A red marker pulsed over a particular region, a ruined temple, hidden deep within the mountains of a long-dead world. "Our intel confirms the location of the ancient weapon," Rollith continued. "Whatever it is, it predates the Galactic Alliance. Some say it was built to win wars. Others claim it was hidden away because it was too powerful. What we know for certain is that our enemies are looking for it too." Lieutenant Vale, the team's archaeotech specialist, crossed her arms. "And we're sure it still exists. This could just be another legend." Rollith fixed her with a sharp look. "Legends don't cause entire star systems to go silent overnight." The room fell into a heavy silence. The reports had been chilling: anomalies in deep space, entire fleets disappearing without distress calls, entire planets reduced to hollow husks of what they once were. The Alliance suspected a superweapon, but no one had ever confirmed it. Until now. The mission was simple on paper: travel to the ruins, retrieve the weapon, and bring it back before it fell into enemy hands. But if there was one thing Rollith knew, it was that nothing about the unknown was ever simple. Arrival at the ruins. The descent was rough, turbulence shaking their dropship as it entered the planet's decayed atmosphere. Thick storm clouds crackled with violet lightning, illuminating the ancient landscape below, a desolate expanse of blackened rock and sand, stretching endlessly under a blood-red sky. "This place is dead," Vale muttered as she adjusted her scanner. "No life readings. Barely any atmosphere." And yet, Rollith trailed off. The temple was still standing, its massive stone structure untouched by time, as if the elements themselves refused to erode its secrets. Towering spires jutted from the earth like skeletal fingers, surrounding a central entrance that pulsed with faint blue energy. Symbols, unfamiliar yet eerily familiar, glowed along the walls as if whispering a forgotten story. The team disembarked, their boots crunching against the brittle ground. Weapons ready, they moved cautiously toward the entrance. "Scanners picking up anything?" Rollith asked. Vale shook her head. "Energy readings are off the charts, but it's not radiation, not anything I recognize. It's like the temple itself is alive." The doors groaned open at their presence, stone grinding against stone. The air inside was thick, charged with something ancient and unseen. The team moved forward, their footsteps echoing. As they reached the center of the chamber, a massive circular platform glowed beneath them, lines of light racing outward. Then, a voice, deep, resonant, and filled with something unfathomable, echoed through the chamber. "Welcome, protectors." Rollith's breath caught in his throat. The team froze. The legends had said they were looking for a weapon. But the way the voice spoke, the weight of its presence, this wasn't a machine. This was something else entirely. And they were not alone. The chamber pulsed with energy, casting shifting shadows against the ancient walls. The air itself felt charged, like the moment before a lightning strike. Rollith tightened his grip on his weapon, but deep down, he knew, whatever had spoken wasn't something he could fight with mere firepower. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice steady despite the growing unease in his gut. The blue symbols on the walls brightened, and the ground trembled beneath them. The energy pulsing through the chamber converged in the center, swirling into a shape, a massive figure, tall and imposing, yet undeniably human. It was clad in strange, battle-worn armor, the design unlike anything recorded in galactic history. The face was shadowed, obscured by a hood of pure energy. The figure lifted its gaze, glowing eyes locking onto the team. "You are not the ones I expected," it said, its voice layered, as if countless echoes spoke alongside it. Vale's scanner beeped furiously in her hands. She frowned at the readings, her face pale. This isn't a recording. It's alive." Rolith stepped forward cautiously. "Are you the weapon?" The figure's expression was unreadable, but something in its stance shifted. It took a slow step forward, and the entire chamber seemed to breathe with it. "I am no weapon," it said. "I am human." Silence fell like a hammer. The word carried weight, an ancient authority that neither the team nor their ancestors had ever fully understood. Rolith felt a shiver run down his spine. "That's impossible. Humans are gone," the being interrupted. "Erased from history. But we were never weapons. We were protectors." Vale shook her head. "That doesn't make sense. Humans are a minor species in the Alliance. They're not extinct. They're just average." The figure tilted its head, as if studying her. Then, its gaze seemed to pierce through them all. "You know nothing of what humanity was. Of what we chose to become." Rolith exchanged glances with his team. This wasn't what they had come for. They had expected a superweapon, an artifact, maybe even a doomsday device. But this? "What happened to you?" Rolith asked, stepping closer. The chamber dimmed as if responding to the weight of the question. The figure exhaled, energy swirling around it like mist. "We were betrayed," it said, its voice quieter now, almost sorrowful. "We gave everything to protect this galaxy. And when the time came, when our strength was needed most, we were cast aside, sealed away." Rolith's heart pounded. He could hear the pain beneath the words. This wasn't just history, this was personal. Vale's voice was barely above a whisper. "Who did this to you?" The chamber trembled again. The blue symbols flickered, and the air grew heavier. The figure looked up, its glowing eyes filled with something ancient and unreadable. "They will come again," it said. "And you are not ready." Rolith's fingers tightened around his weapon. "Who?" The figure's gaze locked onto his, and for the first time, true emotion flickered across its face. "The ones who fear what humanity truly is." A deep rumbling shook the temple. Dust cascaded from the ceiling. The energy pulsing through the walls grew erratic. Vale glanced at her scanner, eyes wide. "Something's happening. Power levels are spiking, fast." The figure turned toward the massive door behind it, a passageway deeper into the ruins. "You came seeking a weapon," it said. "But all you have found is a choice." Rolith swallowed hard. "What choice?" The chamber shuddered as the temple itself seemed to groan. A low, distant sound echoed through the ruins, something unnatural, something waking up. The figure turned back to them, its eyes now blazing with renewed fire. "To awaken me," it paused, as if the next words carried unfathomable weight. "Or to let me sleep and face the darkness alone." Before anyone could speak, the temple roared, and the decision was no longer theirs alone to make. The chamber trembled, ancient dust cascading from the high-vaulted ceiling. The deep rumbling wasn't just the structure reacting, it was something alive. A force beyond their understanding. Rolith instinctively steadied himself, eyes darting toward his team. Vale's scanner was going wild, its screen flashing unreadable warnings. Dren, their engineer, tightened his grip on his toolkit as if that could somehow prepare him for what was coming. The being, this so-called human, stood motionless, watching them. "We don't have time for this," Dren muttered. "We need to decide, now." Rolith knew he was right. The mission was to retrieve a weapon. But this? This was far more than they'd been prepared for. He turned to the glowing figure. If we wake you, what happens next? The entity studied him for a long moment. Then, it spoke, its voice carrying a weight that made the very air heavy. I will remember. A chill ran down Rolitha's spine. Remember what? Vale asked hesitantly. The figure's glowing eyes flickered with something, an emotion, buried deep beneath centuries of slumber. Who I was, it said. What I was meant to do. And why I was betrayed. Rolith felt the weight of those words settle over them like a storm cloud. Something in his gut told him that once they took this step, there was no turning back. The temple shook again, and this time, the tremor wasn't coming from the entity itself. Vale's eyes darted to her scanner. Something else is waking up, she said, her voice tight. There's movement. All around us. Rolith clenched his jaw. Whatever decision they made, they had to make it now. Fine, he said. Tell us what to do. The entity stepped forward, its form more defined now, no longer just a glowing outline but something real. Tangible. Its presence filled the space, commanding it. You must release the seal, it said. But be warned, if you do, there will be no undoing it. Rolith exchanged a glance with Vale, who gave him a barely perceptible nod. They had come for a weapon. They had found something far greater. Rolith took a deep breath and pressed his palm to the glowing console before him. The temple screamed. A surge of energy shot through the chamber, racing through the walls, igniting the ancient runes with blinding light. The air cracked like a thunderclap, sending shockwaves through the ground. The entity exhaled sharply as if feeling something for the first time in millennia. And then, its eyes snapped open. Pure, raw power radiated from it, pressing against them like a tidal wave. The walls of the chamber shifted, revealing carvings, scenes of great battles, of civilizations rising and falling, all centered around one unchanging figure. Him. The last of the true guardians. The ancient being's voice was stronger now, more alive. I remember. Rolith barely had time to process those words before the entire temple lurched. The walls twisted as something dark and shapeless began to pour from the cracks in reality itself. A voice, cold and malevolent, echoed through the chamber. He has awakened. We must end this, before it is too late. Rolith spun around, weapon raised. They weren't alone anymore. The temple walls pulsed with an eerie glow, the ancient runes shifting as if alive. The air had grown thick, charged with something Rolith couldn't name, but he felt it. A presence. Watching. Waiting. And then, the voice. He has awakened. We must end this, before it is too late. Rolith turned sharply, weapon raised. His team did the same. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the chamber's walls, twisting and writhing like living things. Something was coming. The Guardian, this ancient being they had just awakened, stood rigid, glowing eyes locked onto the encroaching darkness. His expression was unreadable, but something in his stance made Rolith uneasy. You knew they would come, Rolith accused, gripping his weapon tighter. The Guardian did not look at him. Of course. Vale's scanner beeped wildly. I'm detecting something wrong, the energy signatures are unstable. It's like reality itself is warping. Dren took a step back. I don't like this. Suddenly, the shadows moved. With a sickening ripple, something detached from the darkness, a shape, humanoid but grotesquely elongated, its form flickering like a glitch in space itself. Its eyes, if they could be called that, were swirling voids, deeper than the abyss. Rolitha's breath hitched. His instincts screamed at him to run. But then, the thing spoke. Guardian, it hissed, voice like oil sliding over shattered glass. You should not have awakened. The Guardian remained silent, his fists clenched at his sides. Rolitha's grip on his weapon tightened. "Who are you?" The creature's head twisted, its hollow gaze settling on him. "We are the Silence," it whispered. "The ones who ended your kind." Rolitha's heart pounded. "The Silence," Vale murmured, eyes wide. "It's real." The legend said they were a myth, an enemy so powerful that even the Guardians couldn't defeat them. The Guardian finally spoke. "Not could not," he corrected softly. "Would not." A cold chill ran down Rolitha's spine. The Silence laughed, a sick, warping sound that made the walls tremble. "You still lie to yourself," it said. "You know what you are. What you did. You were not the protector of this galaxy, Guardian." It leaned forward, whispering like a venomous wind. "You were its executioner." The Guardian stiffened. Rolith glanced at him, suddenly uncertain. Was this true? Had they just unleashed something far worse than a weapon? The Guardian's glow flickered. His voice, when he spoke, was strained. "I did what I had to." The Silence laughed again. Rolitha's mind raced. What did he mean? Then, in a blur of movement, the Silence lunged. Rolith barely had time to react before the darkness exploded. The chamber plunged into chaos. The walls cracked, the air ripped apart, and the battle began. And in the center of it all, the Guardian stood, unmoving, silent, staring into the abyss of his own past. Rolith realized, with a sinking dread, that their greatest threat was not the Silence. It was the doubt consuming the Guardian from within. The chamber shook as the Silence spread like ink across the ancient walls. The runes that once glowed with the Guardian's awakening now flickered, their energy dimming as if smothered by an unseen force. Rolith barely dodged as a tendril of darkness lashed out, striking the stone where he had stood a moment before. His pulse pounded. They had fought many enemies before, pirates, warlords, even rogue AI, but this was something else. This wasn't a battle of strength. It was something deeper, something wrong. Vale screamed. Rolith turned just in time to see her collapse to her knees, hands gripping her head. Her eyes, usually sharp and calculating, were wide with terror, darting wildly as if she were seeing something the rest of them could not. "No, no, no," she gasped. "Get out of my head." Rolith lunged for her, but something cold wrapped around his mind. A voice, not his own, slithered into his thoughts. "You were never meant to be here." Rolith staggered, clutching his skull. Flashes of failure, of fear, of death flickered before his eyes. He saw himself, standing over the corpses of his own team. He saw civilizations burned to the ground, entire star systems wiped out because of choices he had made, or had yet to make. "You will betray them." Just as he did. Rolith gasped for air. "This isn't real. It's a trick." The Guardian. Rolith turned toward him, straining against the overwhelming force pressing into his mind. The Guardian stood motionless in the center of the chamber, his glow flickering, dimming. The same darkness that whispered into Rolitha's thoughts now surrounded him, feeding on something unseen. Guilt. The Guardian, it's using his guilt against him. Rolith realized. Dren fired wildly at the tendrils of shadow. Then snap him out of it. Rolith clenched his fists and pushed forward, every step feeling like wading through molasses. The Guardian's eyes were unfocused, his expression carved from stone. The weight of his past, his failures, pressed down on him like a dying star. Rolith reached him, grabbed his arm. "Guardian. You have to fight." The Guardian didn't move. The Silence laughed, 1,000 voices overlapping. "He cannot. Because deep down, he knows the truth. He was not betrayed. He betrayed himself." A pulse of dark energy surged outward, knocking Rolith back. Rolith gritted his teeth. This wasn't a fight of weapons. It was a battle of wills. You're not just some weapon of war. Raloth shouted over the howling void. You were a protector. That means something. The Guardian's glow flickered, but for a brief second, his eyes met Raloth's. Raloth pressed forward. You think your past defines you? That guilt is all you are? It's not. You were willing to give everything to protect this galaxy, and that's exactly why you have to fight now. The Silence's form wavered. No more running, Raloth said, stepping between the Guardian and the abyss. No more regret. Choose who you are, right now. The Guardian's glow surged, bright, stronger. The runes on the walls pulsed in response. The Silence shrieked, its form thrashing, losing shape. Raloth turned back to the Guardian, breathing heavily. You're not alone, he said. You never were. For the first time, the Guardian blinked. His expression softened. And then, his body erupted in light. The chamber blazed with golden light as the Guardian's energy surged outward, pushing back the darkness. The Silence screeched, its many voices writhing in agony as tendrils of shadow snapped and recoiled from the radiant force. Raloth stumbled back, shielding his eyes. The weight that had pressed against his mind, his fears, his doubts, was suddenly lifted. He could breathe again. The Guardian hovered above the chamber floor, his form now fully illuminated, his presence overwhelming yet steady. His gaze locked onto the swirling mass of darkness before him. No more, he said, his voice resolute. The Silence twisted and lashed out with a desperate fury, its tendrils seeking to ensnare him once more. But this time, the Guardian did not retreat. He raised a hand, and with a mere thought, the darkness froze in place. Vale, still recovering from the mental assault, gasped. It's afraid. Dren gritted his teeth. Good. It should be. Raloth, heart pounding, took a step forward. Guardian, can you destroy it? The Guardian did not answer immediately. His expression was calm, yet sorrowful. I can end it, he murmured. But destruction alone is not the answer. The Silence screeched again, but its movements were sluggish, weaker. The Guardian tightened his hand into a fist. Raloth could feel it now, the nature of the enemy. It wasn't just an external force. It fed on fear, on regret, on sorrow. It had no power of its own, it only wielded what others gave it. The Guardian closed his eyes. This thing exists because we allow it to. He turned to the team, his gaze piercing. You must reject it. Let go of the fears it has used against you. Raloth exhaled sharply. His failures, his doubts, they had all been amplified by this creature. He had seen himself as nothing more than a man doomed to repeat mistakes. But that was not who he was. One by one, they all stepped forward. Vale whispered, I am not my past. Dren nodded. I will not be controlled by fear. Raloth clenched his fists. We stand together. A tremor ran through the chamber as the Silence let out a final, ear-splitting shriek. The tendrils of darkness snapped like brittle glass, the entity recoiling, shrinking as its power faded. The Guardian raised his hands. Light erupted from his core, flooding the room with warmth, with hope. The Silence convulsed, and then, it was gone. A great stillness followed. The runes on the walls pulsed one final time before settling into a soft, steady glow. The oppressive weight that had hung in the air vanished. Raloth looked around, breathless. Is it over? The Guardian descended, his form returning to a more human shape. It is over, he said. For now. Vale shook her head. You mean it could return? The Guardian studied them, his expression unreadable. Darkness will always exist, he said. But so will the light. He looked at Raloth. And as long as there are those who choose to stand against it, the darkness will never win. Roloth nodded, the weight in his chest lifting. This mission had been about retrieving an ancient weapon. But now, he realized, the true battle had never been about weapons at all. It had been about belief. And they had won. The silence in the chamber was no longer oppressive, it was peaceful. The Guardian stood at the center, his once dormant presence now fully awakened. The team, still catching their breath, looked at one another, grasping the reality of what had just happened. Roloth felt the exhaustion in his bones, but beneath it was something else, relief. The entity that had nearly consumed them all was gone. Not destroyed, but defeated in the only way it could be, by denying it power. Vale glanced at the Guardian, hesitant. So, what now? You were supposed to be a weapon. Are you still one? The Guardian tilted his head, considering. I was never a weapon, he said. I was a protector. But I forgot what that truly meant. Roloth frowned. What changed? The Guardian's gaze met his. You did. A deep warmth spread through Roloth's chest. They had come here expecting to retrieve an artifact of war, something that could tip the balance of power in the galaxy. Instead, they had found something far greater, a reminder of what truly made humanity strong. Hope. Dren let out a breathy chuckle. So, what do we tell Command? That the ancient superweapon turned out to be a guy with a glowing aura? Vale smirked. They'll love that. Roloth shook his head. We tell them the truth. That the most powerful force in the galaxy isn't destruction, it's unity. It's choosing to stand together, even when everything tells you to fall apart. The Guardian gave a small, knowing smile. A lesson civilizations often forget. A faint hum echoed through the chamber, and the runes on the walls dimmed to a gentle glow. The Guardian looked around, as if seeing the place with new eyes. This temple was meant to be a refuge, he said softly. A place of learning. Of wisdom. If the galaxy has forgotten that, then perhaps it is time for me to teach again. Roloth nodded. Then we'll make sure the right people listen. The team turned toward the exit, their mission changed in ways none of them could have foreseen. They had come in search of a weapon to end wars. Instead, they had found a Guardian to prevent them. As they stepped into the light of the temple's entrance, Roloth glanced back one last time. The Guardian stood tall, watching them go, his form radiant but human, his presence powerful but kind. He was not a weapon. He was a promise. A promise that, as long as there were those willing to believe, darkness would never truly win.